historical background of Indian Constitution. Okay, listen carefully. First, in this particular chapter, we are going to discuss about how our constitution got evolved over the period of time. Okay, so our constitution was not just as a result of only between the 1946 to 1949. It got evolved almost all over 150 years. Okay, how that was happened? What are the important laws before our constitution was enacted? All these things we are going to discuss under the topic of historical background of Indian Constitution. Okay, so first you have to understand, guys, that is Europeans, okay, European countries, they establishes European countries, they established these East India companies. East India Company is a very common name. It is not only related to British, it is a common name. These are the companies created by the Western countries to do trade with East India. Because to Europe, okay, India is in the eastern direction. On the western direction, okay, they given naming to India, that is West Indies. West side of the Europe, that is the reason they are calling as a West Indies and East India. To do trade with eastern part of, like India, so this East Indian Company is created, and British Crown also established British East Indian Company. British East Indian Company. Okay, British East Indian Company. These are the private companies, okay, more or less. This British East Indian Company, okay, they started doing trade with India initially. Then Indian ruler Jahangir did not give the permission. Later, Jahangir given the permission. They started doing trade with India. Later, okay, to secure the trade, they started constructing forts. Okay, forts in George, Fort William, like that. Okay, they started constructing forts, but local rulers, okay, Bengal local ruler did not allow this activity, which resulted to Battle of Plassey. In Battle of Plassey, East Indian Company won, and that was the first foundation of British ruling in India. Okay, and in Battle of Plassey, obviously Bengal ruler, he was defeated because he was been tricked by his military commander. Later, the Bengal ruler, along with the help of ruler of Awadh, Mughal Emperor, all of these three forces, they combined together, and again they waged war against East India Company. That resulted to Battle of Buxar. Okay, Battle of Buxar. It was in 1764, and after this Battle of Buxar, obviously Treaty of Allahabad was made. Okay, Treaty of Allahabad was made. According to this Treaty of Allahabad, East India Company, okay, they got tax collection powers, popularly known as Diwani rights. Diwani rights, tax collection powers. And now, when East India Company is doing like these kind of activities, who has to regulate the East India Company? Someone has to regulate the East India Company activities in India, yeah? Then British Parliament started doing acts to regulate East India Company. Okay? So, in this context, you have to understand that. Okay? So, 1764, Battle of Buxar, and 1773, okay, East India Company, okay, 1773 to 1857, and from 1857 to 1947, significant things. Listen, 1764, this Battle of Buxar was happened. From 1773 onwards, British Parliament started making laws which will regulate East India Company, and East India Company will regulate India. Okay? That means up to 1857, Britishers never ruled India directly. Are we clear? Britishers ruled India indirectly through East India Company. And the East India Company was unable to regulate their activity or unable to command their control in India. That was reflected in the form of 1857 revolt. After 1857 revolt, Britishers realized that a small company like East India Company cannot control India for a very long time, and they decided to abolish the East India Company. And British Parliament, okay, British Parliament, they started directly controlling India. So this division, you have to know that. This clarity you must have. This was happened before 1857 and after 1857. Now, when they were doing this in this period, okay, in this period, initially, Governor of Bengal used to be there, Governor of Bengal, and later this Governor of Bengal become Governor General of Bengal, Governor General of Bengal, this person, and later this Governor General of Bengal became Governor General of India, Governor General of India. So these are the positions they used to use. It was before the 1857. Whereas during this time, okay, they used Secretary of State for India, Secretary of State for India, and he is British Minister, British Cabinet Minister, and he sits in UK. Whereas in Indian activities used to be maintained by Viceroy. Okay? Head of India. So these two positions they created after 1857. First, you should know this clarity. Are we clear about this, guys? Then, during this time, what kind of laws they made, and during this time, what kind of laws they made, that we will see anyhow. Okay, meanwhile, first, write on this. Are you done with the modern India and Indian national movement? So then, it looks familiar to you. So all these three people are same, guys, but only as time evolving, their names changed, positions got renamed, and powers enhanced. Possibly based on the situation, we can extend. I'll give break of 15 or 20 minutes. Then after 10:45 something like again we will extend for 1.5 hour, so that we can conclude. Do you have any class tomorrow? Post independence. From when? 11 to 1. So only 2 hours is available tomorrow. Done? Okay? Now, listen students. So far we discussed about how these East India companies got into existence and the administration pattern between 1773 to 1857 and 1857 to 1947, what was the administration pattern and important officials and their naming, so that as we refer in coming classes, you don't get confused. Now, first, we'll try to understand in between 1773 to 1857. In between 1773 to 1857, okay, when British Parliament was controlling East India Company, and East India Company was ruling India during that time. To control East India Company, obviously, okay, they made following legislations. So these are the various legislations, guys. Okay. So these were the laws which mainly British Parliament controlled East India Company and East India Company controlled India. So these are the ones directly made by the British Parliament to control India. Out of this, we got this reference when I was explaining about Speaker and Deputy Speaker. The concept of Speaker, Deputy Speaker borrowed from Montague-Chelmsford reforms. Even when we were discussing about emergency, the concept of emergency borrowed from Government of India Act 1935. At that time I told you. Okay. So first write down this list of information. Then we will see some common observations. Okay. Are we clear, guys? Okay. Now listen carefully. So first you have to understand some common trends between 1773 to 1857. So between 1773 to 1857, what are the common trends? Okay. So the common trend is, now you have to understand. So initially, okay, in the first phase, initially, East India Company had monopoly in trade. East India Company had a monopoly in trade. What does it mean? That means only one company That is, only East India Company can do trade with India from Britain. No other company can do trade with India. That is the initial stages, phase 1. Next, later in phase 2, okay, in second phase, as time going on, okay, East India Company monopoly, East India monopoly was limited. That means it was restricted, limited to only few activities, And the rest of the things, any company, any British company can do trade with India. That means East India Company monopoly got diluted, reduced. Then next phase, okay, in third phase, East India Company trades completely, prohibited. East India Company cannot do trade. And East India Company confined, only to administrative activities, only to administration. East India Company confined only to administration, no more trade. So from here, this evolution you have to understand. That means East India Company, they confined only to administration means they have to supervise only regarding the administrative activities. Later, this administrative setup used by the British. I told you after 1857, British started directly ruling India. For them, they require staff, they require offices, they require administrative setup. All that was provided by the East India Company. So they used the East India Company as a rehearsal, before they directly ruled India. So can we say that from 1773 to 1857, as time going on, East India Company influence increased or decreased? Increased or decreased? Decreased. Because East India Company went from monopoly to only administrative activity. This trend you have to understand. This concept you have to understand. Then when we discuss about individual acts, your life will be very easy. Next thing you have to understand, that is about Indians with the British administration. Indians with the British administration. How Indians' role was there in British administration? How Indians' role was there with the British administration? Listen. In the first phase, Indians, they were taken into this permanent executive, that means government officials. So first, Indians got the opportunity of permanent executive. That means government officials. Indians started getting an opportunity in government jobs. Why this was the first opportunity? Because especially government offices which require low skill, and low pay, they cannot bring them from UK. So obviously those positions have to be open to Indians. That is how first Indians started their interaction into government services. It was through 1853 Act, we will discuss. Next, second chance, next phase, Indians, slowly, they given the opportunity in law-making body. Indians given the opportunity in law-making bodies. That means councils. So this was started since 1861. That is the reason we are calling 1861 Act as a Indian Councils Act. Why we are calling this as a Indian Councils Act? Because Indians started participating in the councils. Indians are into law-making process. In polity basics class, I told you that executives are two types, temporary executive and permanent executive. Permanent executive are government officials. Who are the temporary executive? Ministers. And finally, in third phase, Indians got an opportunity. So executive council. Indians into executive council. Executive council is nothing but, for your easy understanding, ministers. So temporary executive. Indians started becoming ministers. This was the last opportunity Indians got, and later we got our independence and we formed our own government. So this is about Indians' journey with British administration. First, we became government servants, then we became part of lawmaking body, then finally we became the ministers. Okay? Because once we become the ministers, obviously staff will work under the minister only. Okay, this is how slowly we got evolved over the period of time. Are we clear, guys? This is, okay, write on this first. You have to know these concepts first. Then only you will easily understand the individual acts. Otherwise, it is very difficult to understand the individual acts. Okay? Once this chapter is done, then try to refer the Lakshmikant book. You will easily understand compared to, okay, before we're done with this chapter. Mostly you will get confused about governor, governor general, legislative council, executive council and all these things. Are we clear, guys? Okay. Now, so far you know that this East India Company gradually reduced their role and Indians Association started this and gradually over the period of time we got independence. Okay. So when you go through these concepts, when you go through this chapter, you will understand, guys, the process of whatever we are having, whether it is a constitution, whether it is a parliament or government, these entire processes, they evolved over the period of time, naturally. That is the reason we adopted a British parliamentary system, okay, rather than some other countries, because we were well familiar with this process over the period of these acts. Are we clear? Next, okay, let us discuss about one more concept, that is regarding the law making and law implementation. Law making and law implementation. First, listen, guys, in the present day, who is involving with the law making? Obviously, legislature. Okay? Legislature. Legislature, which is known as parliament in central level and state legislature in the state level. You know that. Okay? Legislature. Okay. State legislature. State legislature. This in the present times. Okay. And we have law implementation also. Okay. Law implementation. Law implementation. And this law implementation generally we call them as executive. So this executive, we have Prime Minister plus Council of Ministers in central level, and in state level we have CM plus Council of Ministers. Are we clear up to this now? We are having this formula. Now listen, guys. So between 1773 to up to 1853, up to this, after 1853 discuss. Okay, between 1773 to 1853, listen carefully, between this law making plus law implementation. Law making plus law implementation used to be done by only one body. There is no separate like this. Law implementation and law making and law implementation, they used to be done only by Governor, okay, Governor General Council. You call that as Governor General Council. That's it. We have a common body. But after 1853, listen guys carefully, after 1853, there was a separation for law implementation and law making as well as law implementation. Both separate bodies were introduced. Same like the present form. Okay, in parliamentary form of government, always remember guys, in parliamentary form of government, you have two organs, law making and law implementation, legislature and executive. Already I told you that this executive will derive from where? Legislature. Isn't it? Executive will derive from where? Legislature. Now listen, here after 1853, with respect to laws, law lawmaking body we used to call as Governor General Council, same like previously we used the word Governor General Council, whereas a law implementation, we used to call as Governor General Executive Council. Governor General Executive Council. Governor General Executive Council. Okay. It is like Parliament in the modern day, and it is like Prime Minister plus Council of Ministers in the modern day. Are we clear about this? Governor General Council, same like Parliament in the central level, and Governor General Executive Council, same like Prime Minister plus Council of Ministers. Here Prime Minister is the Governor General, and Council of Ministers means he will be assisted by other four members, later 5 members, later it becomes the 6 members. Okay, are we clear about this? This is after 1853. Then after 1857, okay, after 1857, lawmaking done by, okay, so instead of Governor General Council, we are using the word Indian Councils. Indian Council. Sometimes we also use the word this Central Legislative Council. Central Legislative Council. Central Legislative Council. And also we used to use another word, Imperial Legislative Council. Imperial Legislative Council. Imperial Legislative Council. These are the 3 terms we frequently use. So these indicates the present day Parliament. Okay. So Indian Councils Act means what? Indians into lawmaking bodies from 1861. What about the law implementation? Regarding the law implementation, okay, law implementation. Previously, we used to call law implementing body as a Governor General Executive Council. Now we are calling it as a Viceroy's Executive Council. Okay, Viceroy's Executive Council. Viceroy Executive Council. That means Viceroy and Viceroy plus 6 members used to be there. Okay, they used to implement laws. Okay, this terminology you have to understand, guys. First, we started with the lawmaking body, law implementation body, same, Governor General Council. Later, lawmaking is Governor General Council, law implementation is Governor General Executive Council. After 1857, lawmaking body we used to call with different names, Indian Councils, and Imperial Legislative Council and Central Legislative Council. But for law implementation, we had only one name, that is Viceroy Executive Council. Are we clear about this? Okay, write on this. So out of the 4 major subjects, how many subjects you are done with? Almost all polity you will be done with. You're done with the history, economy, geography. When your coaching started? September. When? September 2024. Okay. This is reasonable. You finished very well. All the 4 major subjects will be done. And what are the other subjects? IR also done for you. Then environment done. Disaster management is also done. Nice, very good. Okay. Because in some institutions still, like students beyond 1 year still they are with their classes occupied. I think you know that when you ask other students and all, you get to know. Okay, guys? Done? Okay. So this is about Indians' interaction and after 1857, how the lawmaking and the law implementation used to be there, and before 1773, before 1853, and between 1773 to 1853. Okay. This is how law-making bodies used to be there and law implementation bodies used to be there. Okay, so that's in future classes when I am dictating Viceroy Executive Council, it expanded from 5 members to 6 members, means again you don't need to worry about that. Okay, so now next, Furthermore, one more thing you have to understand, guys, regarding this East India Company and regarding this historical background. I told you, Indians got introduced into lawmaking bodies, okay, as a second step. Initially, they were into government services, okay. So, Indian in the lawmaking process. Let's see, Indians, okay, Indians in lawmaking process. Indians in lawmaking process. So as a part of this Indians in lawmaking process, you have to know that, students, initially this is also phases wise. Phase 1, okay. I'm saying that Indians started their journey in the lawmaking process in 1861, isn't it? Okay. So in the first time when Indians got this opportunity, first, okay, Indians allowed in the lawmaking bodies, but Indians were not allowed. Indians were not allowed. Indians were not allowed to ask, questions, on budget. Okay, Indians were given the opportunity in the parliament, but Indians cannot ask question on the budget. Actually, where does that money is coming from? India. Where the money is spending? India. But we were not allowed to ask the questions. That means very nominally they given powers to us initially, okay. Later in the second phase, okay, in the phase 2, Indians allowed to ask questions on budget. Indians allowed to ask questions on the budget, fine, but not allowed to ask supplementary questions. That means additional questions you cannot ask. Supplementary questions cannot be asked. Very, very important. Okay. I told you in parliament topic about the supplementary questions and all. So only they can ask questions, but additionally they cannot ask any questions for explanation. This was the second phase about Indians in the lawmaking body. And in phase 3, okay, in third phase, by third phase, Indians allowed to ask supplementary questions. Indians allowed to ask supplementary questions, but not allowed to vote on budget. That means we can ask questions and we can get the explanation as well, but we don't have any voting rights in the budget. And finally, in phase 4, okay, Indians allowed to vote on the budget. Okay, Indians were allowed to vote on the budget. This is also very important. Okay, this is how Indians journey in the lawmaking bodies. Okay, are we clear about this? Because in various acts you will get to know this. Okay, Indians are not allowed, and all these things. This is also one of the observation you have to make. Right on this. This is about Indians in lawmaking bodies. Okay. Now, well revised, friends, whatever we discussed in today's class. So listen quickly. And okay, please go through your notes where I am explaining. So in today's class, we started with the fundamental duties, and we gone through all the 11 fundamental duties, and we're done with the notes regarding the fundamental duties. Then we started the unit of historical background of Indian Constitution. There first I explained about East India Company and how they ventured into India, how they established their ruling, and how they consolidated their ruling. They consolidated their ruling through Battle of Buxar 1764. After that, they got the right to collect taxes, and to control this East India Company, British government started making laws. Initially, between 1773 to 1857, British Parliament enacted laws to control East India Company, which will further regulate their affairs in India. After 1857, Britishers started directly administrating India. During that time, we had two positions, Secretary of State for India, who was a British cabinet minister and who sits in UK. Whereas Indian administration is done by the Viceroy. Viceroy will be helped by Viceroy Executive Council. Now tell me guys, Viceroy Executive Council is a law making body or law implementing body? Law implementing body. That clarity you must have. Next we discussed about acts between 1773 to 1857 and 1857 to 1947. Then we discussed about how the East India Company role keep on changing from 1773 to 1857. As time is going on, East India Company monopoly got reduced and finally it restricted only to administrative activities and its entire trade activities got cancelled out. Then we discussed about how Indians associated with the British administration. Initially, they were associated as permanent executive, then lawmaking bodies. After that, temporary executive, that is by being members of executive councils. Central level Viceroy Executive Council, state level that will be the Governor Executive Council. Next, we discussed about in lawmaking. So initially, the lawmaking and law implementation used to be carried by Governor General Council. Later, it separated to lawmaking body and law implementing body. Lawmaking body used to call as Governor General Legislative Council and law implementing is Governor General Executive Council. Later, after 1857, the name changed. This Governor General Legislative Councils, they became Indian councils. Sometimes you also call as Central Legislative Council and Imperial Legislative Council. Whereas implementation part is done by the Viceroy Executive Council. Regarding Indians in lawmaking bodies, we know that Indians started their journey in lawmaking bodies in 1861, but that was never smooth. We did not get actual powers. Initially, we allowed to ask, questions on anything except budget. Later, they allowed Indians to ask questions on budget, but not additional explanatory question. Then supplementary questions allowed, and finally, we allowed to participate even on the voting as well. Are we clear about this? Okay. Tomorrow class we will discuss about the individual acts like 1773 and all. There your life will be very easy as we've done with the majority of this explanation. Tomorrow we'll discuss about 1773 to 1853, then 1857 revolts, and up to 1892. Up to 1892 we can finish off in tomorrow class. Are we clear guys? Okay. So this is for today's class. Thank you. And regarding the newspaper, please open today's newspaper. Okay, students, page number 1. Center to gather support to remove Justice Verma. Very, very important, related to GS paper 2, Indian Polity and Constitution. Already I explained in class that how Supreme Court and High Court judge will be removed. Clearly I explained that process and you can interlink that GS concept with this current affairs. Then same page, Global South Voice Key to Contemporary World's Progress. You can link this to IR, and already in IR classes we discussed about Global South, NAM and all these things. So it's related to IR and PSAR paper 2B as well, related to this. And regarding the PSAR, all the IR today important articles already shared. And editorial, page 10, Socialism, Secularism are the spirit of Constitution. GS paper 2, Polity. PSAR paper 1B, it is related to Indian polity. Paper 1B. Same page on the left side bottom. Murder most foul. Policemen resort to violence to extract confession on mere suspicion. It's related to Tamil Nadu 1. GS paper 2 Polity. Okay. It's related to Article 22 Fundamental Rights. Should be very clear. Page 12. Indigenous defense procurement worth 1.05 lakh crores cleared. GS paper 3 Defense. Yesterday in my YouTube channel, I explained about this bunker buster and how comparison we can draw with US and Indian and all. Okay, India is developing the bunker buster which can be launched through Agni 5 missile, whereas American one they'll dropped from bombers. Okay, compared to that, it is less expensive and more controlled and more safe as well. Same page on the right side, top right side, 3 Apache combat helicopters to arrive in India by July 15. I told you when we were discussing about India-US relations. Do you remember that? Apache and Chinook helicopters. It's a very interesting development, guys. See, in the same page, in the middle right side, student visa aspirants must make social media profiles public, says US Embassy. That means why? Because they want to check what these guys are doing on social media. Whether they made any comments against America previously or any racial remarks and religious remarks. These had to be, checked. Nowadays, social media becoming unchecked. So people are, making some derogatory posts about other people, other caste, and other sentiments and all. It must be stopped. సోషల్ మీడియాలో ముందు రైట్ టు ప్రైవసీ. నీ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ అడగట్లేదు కదా, నీ క్యాస్ట్ అడగట్లేదు, నువ్వు పోస్ట్ చేస్తున్నావు ఏంది అని అడుగుతున్నారు అంతే. ఇక్కడ ఏమడుగుతున్నారు చూడండి. Social media profiles public. Students, vocational students and exchange visitors from US who are seeking US visa will have to turn their social media profiles into public state for establishing their identity and admissibility to the US. Okay. So, private unte emotadi, we don't know their identity and all. So, public means obviously, actually there is no privacy even when you are applying for embassy, because you are submitting all your education documents, you are related to date of birth and all these things. It's open. So, they have to check through security. Okay. Of course, regarding the privacy also matters when it comes to, for example, in your social media, you put your update like, I don't believe in any religion. Okay. That's your privacy. That cannot be questioned by US. What they will check, whether your posts are anything related to anti-US or not. Regarding your privacy, they don't mind. For example, if you keep your marital status not to be revealed, or unmarried or married, it doesn't. Religion, if you're practicing whatever the religion, they don't question, but they would like to know your public activity. Even nowadays, companies before hiring their employees also, they are checking their social media profile and all. The bottom left, you can see center issues strong rebuttal to China, says Dalai Lama's reincarnation is his decision. India-China relations, please check GS paper 2. Page number 14. Hundreds of pilgrims begin Amarnath trek. GS paper 1, history and culture. Same page, bottom. IPS appointments in CAPFs continue despite Supreme Court order against the move. Very, very important. GS paper 3, security. Actually, Supreme Court mentioned that the top ranks in CAPF, okay, previously they were given to IPS. Because of that, obviously, what will happen? You are killing the motivation of the officers, because they know that in CAPF, officer who is working in CAPF, they know that in future they won't get any promotion. Promotions will be given to IPS only. So to prevent that, Supreme Court mentioned that the top level post should not be given to IPS, they should be given to the CAPF personnel only. But still, governments are not following. And you know that governments have a habit of not following the court orders. Okay. Page 15. Rare earth crunch, a bigger issue for auto firms than expected. Rare earth minerals. Regarding this, our Prime Minister visit to Argentina is significant. You can understand. Argentina is popular for rare earth minerals like lithium. Okay, you have to watch. Today he is in Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah, today. Okay, last 2 days Ghana, then Argentina, Brazil, and finally Namibia. See the capital. Page 16. Israel is using starvation to commit genocide. Amnesty, very, very important. GS paper 2. That means Israel is not allowing food access to Palestinians. That equivalent to genocide, because you're killing so many peoples. You watched yesterday match? It's very interesting, yeah? In text and context, I shared this article already. Can the Supreme Court halt an act passed by a state? Can the Supreme Court stop a legislation passed by the state? So this was about today's newspaper and today's class. If you have any doubts, ask me, guys.